The war on terror is a slogan designed only for politics. It is not a strategy to make America safe. It's a bumper sticker, not a plan.
When you go so far as to suggest that the global war on terror is a bumper sticker or slogan, it kind of makes the point that I've been making over and over again, that the Democrats, or at least some of them, are in denial.
Well, there you have Rudy Giuliani seeing an opportunity and taking it. John Edwards seeing, I guess, what he thought was an opportunity. This on a day when President Bush, in a speech at the Coast Guard Academy, had unveiled some previously classified information in which he said showed that Osama bin Laden had actually sent a message or an emissary to Massoud al-Zarqawi, who was the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq, tasking him to try to carry out some terrorist attacks against the United States outside of Iraq, establishing, presumably, that there was obviously a relationship between Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda and Iraq. Some analytical observations on this now from Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and the syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer, Fox News contributors all. Well, what about this little dust-up here? What about what the president said, and what about what Edwards said, Charles?
Well, what Edwards said, you can understand a critique of the term the war on terror and say it's not perhaps the most accurate. It ought to have been the war on radical Islam. But we know why the president chose the war on terror. After 9/11, he didn't want to antagonize the Muslims around the world by using that phrase. So perhaps it's not the most accurate, but the underlying reality, whatever is the phrase that you're going to use, is undeniable. And for Edwards to...
You mean that there is a war?
That there is a war against radical Islam that's out to get us. That's a fact. And to deny it or to minimize it and to mitigate it the way that Edwards appears to be doing is a complete sellout to the anti-war left. I can understand a person arguing against the war in Iraq and saying perhaps it's irrelevant to the war in al-Qaeda. I think that's wrong, but I can understand that argument. But the war on al-Qaeda is real. It's all over the world. And the irony is that the president is the victim of his own success. Nobody expected that we would go 6 months or a year or 2 years without a second attack. People were saying, oh, al-Qaeda works on a 2-year cycle, a 3-year cycle. It doesn't work on a 6-year cycle. It's out there. But the president's success has lulled, particularly the left, into a position in which it'll believe this nonsense that the war is an exaggeration or a way to win political points.
You know, I found this whole exchange rather confusing. If Edward was saying there is no global war of terror, in other words, there is no terrorist threat to us, that would be completely out of line. But that's not what he's saying. I think he was saying he doesn't like the way the president is waging war on terrorists, which I don't think he denies is a threat here. Now, one thing about Rudy Giuliani, he takes any opportunity to remind people of his unique terrorist-fighting credentials as the hero of 9/11, and he says John Edwards doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that they've been targeting us since the early 90s. That's not what John Edwards said. He didn't say there isn't terrorists trying to hit us. He just doesn't like the way the president is fighting the war on terror. He didn't say we shouldn't be having a fight against terrorism. I think this was one of those debates where both parties were completely talking past each other.
Well, why would John Edwards be attacking the phrase war on terror? Of course, it's a bumper sticker. It's shorthand. It's a way of in a few words, describing what you're doing. You're fighting a war against terrorists. Why would he, other than to appease the anti-war left, as Charles said, why would he make an issue over this? It seems there's only one reason, and that's to pander to the anti-war left. I wanted to add one thing, though. Particularly Bush's speech today was very good, pointing out contact between Osama bin Laden and Zarqawi in Iraq. And we'd known earlier that the number two to Osama bin Laden, Zawahiri, had contact with Zarqawi as well. Obviously, al-Qaeda is incredibly active in Iraq. They're the ones doing the car bombings. Now, that leads to one thing in particular, and that is what General Petraeus has been saying over and over again. How are these al-Qaeda people getting to Iraq? They fly into Damascus, Syria, and come across the border, and there they are, and the car bombs have continued, and these are al-Qaeda. Now, I think Bush has had some success, but he needs to do something about Syria. Talking to the Syrians isn't going to do any good. Nancy Pelosi certainly didn't talk them into anything. I can't understand to this day why the Bush administration allows this to continue. I mean, take out the Damascus airport, block the border, do something. So this stream of al-Qaeda terrorists doesn't continue to flow through the Damascus airport in Syria into Iraq and cause all this problem.